Hello, everybody. Nobody's on here yet, so I'm literally talking to myself, but I am so excited for today, and I am so excited to bring Paulina on. I'm going to bring her on right away. Again, this is my new series. I'm going to have this every Friday, and I'm going to have it talking to all different kinds of people, men, women, girls, about their self-love and how they find their self-love. So I'm going to bring Paulina on right now. And we'll get started. Hello, Chels. Hello. Hello, Kelsey. What's up? All right, so before Paulina comes on here, I'll kind of tell you a little bit about how I know Paulina. So Paulina and I have been friends for ever. I was actually really good friends with her brother first. Hey,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just kind of sharing how I know you and the details behind that. So I was originally friends with Paulina's brother, Zach, when we were young. And then Paulina kind of took me over. And Paulina and I became really good friends. We danced together. It was so fun. And Paulina has always been somebody who is the utmost themselves, always. So Paulina, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? What do you do? What do you like? Like, tell us a little bit about you.
I like long walks on the beach and pina coladas. No, just kidding. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Alyssa, for having me, and congratulations on starting out this. Oh yeah, we also do.
Yeah, Paulina and I. If you've ever said you know me and you see me do this, this is kind of from Paulina and I. We've done this for years, so you're probably gonna see this a lot today.
Yeah, so it'll happen. Just go with it, okay?
Yes, Patsy, I will save this to bring it later.
Oh yeah.
Watch it later.
Comment. Well, I feel like a Bachelor reject. Or
I know. Like, isn't this fun? Well, you kind of were not a Bachelor reject. You're actually a Bachelor winner. So let's get into it. So yeah. So guys, Paulina is fucking hilarious. We're gonna talk about some stories today, and I hope they get a little raunchy. So if you're not up for that,
you know,
get out of here. I'm also gonna share some of mine.
Yes, I can't wait.
Some of my worst dates. Okay, so Paulina, tell us about Paulina Bachelorette and what it is and why you decided to do it.
Okay, so when I first started doing this, it wasn't like I didn't have a plan before I started. It just kind of all like snowballed into what it ended up being. So essentially, I dated a guy for a couple of years, and it was good. It was great. We broke up. I was 24, I guess, and I was like, okay, every guy that I'm dating, I know I'm not going to marry them. Like, I'm not like, and again, like, not bad relationships. And I was always like, oh, you know, like, maybe I'll marry them. But it was never like, this is my husband. Like, I have found the one. So I obviously downloaded like every single dating app that you can. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna find my husband. Like, I'm gonna date with purpose more so, instead of just like dating, like meeting somebody at a bar or like meeting somebody on an app and going on one date and being like, okay, this is working for me. Like, why don't we go on another date? And then like somehow that just snowballs into like a 6-month relationship. Like
100%.
Yeah. And I knew that I have a personality where I get along with tons of different people. It's really easy for me to meet somebody and like pick out what I like about them. And
yeah,
like,
and you and I are very similar that way. Yeah. Where it's like we can both like find anybody attractive, like men, women, like we can find anybody attractive.
And you fixate on it, and you're like, oh, this person's amazing. And then like 6 months later, I was like, wait, like that person was definitely amazing, but like not for me. Like that wasn't necessarily like my best partner.
My thing was always accents or talent. So like a guy who either was really talented at anything, didn't matter what he looked like, didn't matter if I was into him, but like I just was like, I would like
tie cherry with your tongue, so into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so what was your thing? Like what was your what's your thing that you saw in people that you liked? Basically everything.
Literally anything. Like it was like I was like, wow, this person is so funny. And it's like, yeah, but that person is homeless. Like that's probably not like a great
I love it.
Yeah, so literally anything. Or I'm like, oh, that person is so hot, and it's like, but that person's a dick. So it's just like I really wanted to go on and like have a lot of different experiences so that when I found somebody who I really liked and who was like really worth taking myself off the market for, I would know. Like I would know it when I saw it. And then the reason that I did them all kind of like back to back to back and like really close together was because people on dating apps, like anybody who's ever been on a dating app knows like how frustrating the whole process can be. I would say like 60% of the people using a dating app like have a girlfriend or broke up with their girlfriend 10 minutes ago, or just like completely unavailable and like using the app for like whatever purpose that is. So already you have like a really large pool that you need to narrow down. And to do that, you can't just talk to like one person at a time. Like you're never going to find love that way because people take like 5 days to reply. So you have to like really rapid fire it out and then start. So I like download all these apps and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to be really open-minded because you also don't want, like, I didn't want to date somebody with like a really great Tinder profile, like somebody that looks like so hot in their pictures. Like anybody who puts that much work into social media, I was like, maybe probably isn't for me. So I tried to like be really open-minded, like not really judge them on their pictures too much. Like you just never know. Like people look a lot different online than they do in real life.
Totally.
Like definitely that came back to like bite me a couple times, but for the most part it was fine. So yeah, and I guess like the big thing is that like I wouldn't have necessarily met candidate 19 or Tom if I had, I'll use the word settle, but that's not even the right word, but if I had like exclusively explored relationships earlier, like we probably just never would have met.
Totally. And it happens to so many people. And if anybody else has this experience, go ahead and comment. But it happens to all of us that it's like when we're growing up, when like we don't really know what we like and we test some things out, and then a lot of people just kind of fall into a relationship. And then like you said, like 5, even up to 5 years later, you're living together and you're like,
like
do I want to be with this person?
Yeah, you're like sliding into these relationships and then it's been like 4 years and you're 28 and it's like, I guess we'll get a dog and I guess we'll get married. And it's like, you probably shouldn't do that.
And then it's like, oh, a ring will fix the relationship. And then it's a baby will fix the relationship. And at the end of the day, and like, tell me what you think about this. I often think that dating, and again, it's like, if you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else?
So true.
Right? And it's RuPaul. But it's like all of us like don't know who we are and we don't know what we love about ourselves. And then we kind of just find people to kind of fill that void without actually looking into ourselves and deciding like who we are and what we want. So like, go ahead.
Well, and I was also going to say, like, one of the things that I really reflected on was, like, what am I bringing to the table? Because, like, I remember after university, I was like, what are my interests? Like, binge drinking on the weekends and, like, making jokes with my friends. Like, that was literally it. I was like, okay, like, I need interests. So, like, now, and then you have to, like, do that work on yourself and, like, really be like, why would somebody want to date me? And, like, work on those things and, like, everybody has them, by the way. Like, you just have to, like, think about, like, what are your best qualities? Like, how do you want to talk about yourself on these dates? Like, how are you going to, like, really showcase what you're good at? Because everybody has talents, but, like, and knowing how to talk about them is, like, something that's attractive and, like, something that's going to, like, bring people to you.
Totally. I love it. So, we talked about what the Paulina Bachelorette was, but let's now talk about some of the dates. So I want to talk about the worst ones first. So like, okay, I'm going to give you like, do you have like 3 that you can talk about? Or
I
like,
do. I have exactly 3. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was so funny because I also can't believe this was almost 2 years ago. Like I know. It feels like yesterday. And then it also feels like Tom and I are like an old married couple. So it's so funny, but I'm like going through my texts from like, this was like February, March, 2019. And I'm like going through them and I'm like talking to my friend Natalie and I'm like, oh my God, like I forgot like how crazy this shit was.
I know.
Okay. So the first one was candidate 12. And
okay, well, where are the nuts?
Oh yeah. Okay,
I forget.
Okay. So I also called everybody candidates because they were like candidates to be my boyfriend, even though they didn't know it.
Absolutely.
But it's like there's so many. Like I can't keep track of like every Brad, Chris, and Harry. Like, come on. So candidate 12, we had like matched on, I think it was like Bumble. Yeah, it was Bumble. Because like there wasn't, you know how Hinge gives you those like facts, which are nice because you can kind of like, it's like, oh, my favorite team is like this sports team. And I'm like, yeah, go sports. But really, I know nothing about that. But I can like quickly Google
But
it
you can
and
like
have
pretend that you pretend. Yeah, we pretend.
yeah,
Like,
so we had chatted on the app back and forth for like a while. And by a while, I mean like 2 or 3 days because like that was the turnover at this point.
Okay.
And like he was a really good texter, and like girls don't know what I mean when I say this. I mean like he was like engaging, like told good stories, like
Totally not
no
the
spelling
hey,
errors.
what's up? Morning.
Yeah.
What are you up to? Nothing. You? And
Yeah,
then nothing. Like
exactly. Seemed like very charismatic. So I was like, okay, this could be good. Like looked cute. So we go to okay, I should also preface, I had like a schedule. So when I said like 30 dates in 30 days, it wasn't just like every day there's a date. Like, come on, that's exhausting.
Yeah.
But it was like sometimes I would double up on the weekends, like a quick afternoon coffee, and then an evening slot for somebody who was not a first date. I never did any first dates, like dinners or like anything, because it's like if I want to go, I want to go now. So this was a first date, and it was like happy hour at like Bank and Barron. And I get there, and like he's cute. Like he's definitely cute. And
do you look like his pictures?
Yes, but like I would say his pictures were like a hard 8, and like he was like a soft 8.
Okay.
Like it was like yeah, so it was fine. It was like that was like it was like not a deal breaker, but it was like okay, like you were maybe more tanned in the photo. I don't know.
Right.
So we sit down, and he's so awkward, like literally so awkward. Like I'm like, hello, like it's so nice to meet you. Oh my gosh, how are you? And he was like, I'm well, thank you. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is
like, here we go.
Yeah, I'm like, this is not the vibe. And then like everybody gets nervous, so I'm like, okay, we'll get a bottle of wine, like on the stat. And he just like never loosened up. Like we just had his sense of humor was so dry to the point that it made me uncomfortable. Which like some people love that. Like some people just like really vibe with dry humor.
Yeah.
But I am not one of them.
No.
So I had to like it was really bad. I had to like ironically like my stepsister's husband was like sitting at a table like 5 over, and I literally had to text him and be like, I need you to like get this date wrapped up. So that was great. Like not like in an awkward way, but it was like we'd finished the wine, and he was like, should we get another drink? And I was like, no. Like
absolutely not.
I have to literally leave right now.
I love it.
And then this was the worst. Okay, yeah, this guy was the worst date. This is so funny. So this is candidate 8.
Okay.
And candidate 8 was like super spontaneous. Like we had matched on Hinge, and he literally tried to text me like via the app. Like I'm not joking, 4 times at like 4 o'clock. He'd be like, hey, like just don't happen to have anything to do for the next hour. Like any chance you're free? It's like
for like 1 hour right now.
And it's like candidate 8, like I am booking a week out here. Like I'm not free.
I am booked up on my dates.
I literally, like I'm like there's no way I'm free. And then finally the 4th time I was free. I was like, oh, you know what? Candidate 8, I have an opening at 4:30. So we go to Last Best, and like it's happy hour. It's just like we're just gonna have a quick drink. It's great. I get there. He's definitely cute. Like looks like I thought he would. And we're like vibing. Like he's like, oh, I love Stampede. I love country music. Like he seemed like he had like a good group of friends that like pumped him up. I was like, okay. He was an engineer. Just kidding.
But like really, but like I think everybody can understand that engineers are very great and they're very loyal. However, not always the most.
You know what I like about you? You're loyal.
Yeah, I like the loyalty, but I can get it on as well.
Yeah, and then like the date took like a sudden turn. He was like, I love skiing, like I'm obsessed with skiing, and my Hinge profile literally said I hate skiing. Like I don't like skiing. And I don't want to go with you, like ever, honestly.
Yeah.
Which I know is like not normal, which is why I fucking have it in my profile.
Because you're like, if you want someone to like be like a ski bunny, like fuck you. Like it's not gonna be me. Cool.
Be like sun. So anyways, he was like talking about like skiing and blah blah blah, and then I was literally like, I hate skiing. And literally like he just like I don't know if he like didn't really get my humor or like what was happening, but because I literally said it like that. I was like, I hate skiing. And he just like shut off. Like he was like, check please, pretty much. He was like, oh yeah, I better be like going back to work here. And I was like, it's 4:30. Like, I know you don't have to go back to work. You're an engineer. Like, come on. So the date ends like pretty awkwardly. And then this is the best part. Okay, wait, if I exit out of this temporarily to read a message, I'll still be here, right? Will that work?
I think so. If not, I'll add you back in.
Okay, well.
Okay, she's good. There you go.
Okay. So he sent me a text that I found this morning, and I wanted to read like word for word. Yes, but
Okay.
3 weeks after, literally 3 weeks after, he sends me a text, and I'm like, who is this? Like, at this point, I've already met Tom. Like, I'm planning our wedding.
But really?
I get this text, and it's like, hey, Paulina, and I literally don't even have his number saved. Like, sorry, didn't mean to disappear quite so much. As in, like, he meant to disappear a little? I don't know what he meant to do. But anyways, it was so weird. Didn't mean to disappear quite so much. And already I'm still like, who the fuck is this? He's like, anyways, it was really nice meeting you the other week. And, you know, you're really funny. Like, I love all your travel stories. But I'm good with just the one date. I was like, yeah, thanks.
You're like, yeah, you know, I actually wasn't sitting by the phone for 3 weeks, but like, I really appreciate the ego that you got. Like, that's great.
I know.
Honestly, he was probably also like taking people and figuring out what he wants. I love it.
I know.
So what did you figure out from those 2 dates? Like, what was like your thing that you were like, this is what I do not want? Was it something in common, or was it?
No, it was the humor. It was humor for me. Like, we obviously, like, candidate 12 and candidate 8, we just, like, weren't vibing. Like, they didn't get my humor, and, like, I didn't really get theirs. And that, for me, is huge. Like, I need it to be, like, I need you to be making me piss my pants. You're so funny. Or, like, you're pissing your pants because you think I'm so funny. Like, that's the vibe.
Yeah. Because there's like literally nothing hotter than when like a person looks at you and thinks you're the funniest person in the world. Like, you feel like I feel hot when that happens.
Yeah, you're like, oh yes.
Yeah.
Okay, 100%. And then this was like the craziest thing that happened in the whole experience. This started out as a great date. Candidate 4, so early on.
Okay.
And I saw him a few times. Like, I think I saw him like 3 or 4 times before we like cut it off. But we like went for sushi. He had like a really interesting lifestyle. Like, he was like a photographer and like had all these like crazy stories and like was super quiet and like good looking, but like laughed at me. Like, he was nice. Yeah. And then I actually didn't even end things with him until I had met Tom. So like, this was something that I probably would have continued for a little while. And then like 5 months later, I kid you not, my other friend was on an app and she matched with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, definitely go out with him. Like, he was so fun. Like, I really liked hanging out with him. And then she's like a little CIA detective. She like goes on Facebook just to like creep him. And it's like a picture of him and this girl. And she's like, oh, I guess he's like dating someone now. Like, this app must be outdated. And then she was like replying back to him and he was replying back too. So it's like, okay, no, like, that's not what's happening. Like, I'm confused here. And it was the same girl that he had been dating that he told me he just broke up with when we had been dating. And I'm like, no, that's definitely the same girl. He literally had a full-fledged girlfriend, like a full-fledged girlfriend. And like, there were times when we were hanging out, like we'd like go to dinner and he'd be like, yeah, so now I've like got to get back to work, aka probably go home with just my living girlfriend.
Like, so do you actually find like how like percentage of people on dating sites like have girlfriends?
I don't know. Like, it's so, and I like definitely more than 2%. But like, I think a lot of people have like these complicated situations. I don't think this was the case. This guy literally had a full-blown girlfriend. But yeah, I think they have like on again, off again things. And then you like, other people just get like caught in the crossfire, which is why you literally need to date 80 at once so that you can catch the losers immediately and not
now 100%. Do you think that it's because people like either are like really not happy with themselves or not happy with their relationships, so they just like find like an easy fix on Tinder? Like, do you think that's what?
Yeah,
I think
I think now like apps make it so easy for you. Like if someone's like, let's say like Tom and I are in a fight, I could download Hinge and have a new boyfriend in an hour, which is like a new problem for our generation. And like so could he. Like it's like that is it's like we have like a limitless dating pool at our fingertips. And I definitely think like psychologically, like you always are thinking, oh, maybe there's something better when there's not. But like it does like fuck with you.
Totally. Okay, I'm gonna tell you my 2 worst dates like I found on Tinder. And again, I haven't been on Tinder for like obviously 5 years. Even I've been together about 5 years now. So like I was on Tinder before a lot. I wasn't even in the Hinge date. Like I wasn't even online dating for that.
Right.
Okay, so the first one, I show up and he's like pretty cute. We have a good conversation, and within like so we go to like Earl's. So we're sitting down and having like a quick lunch, and 10 minutes in, he looks at me and says, "Listen, I have to tell you something." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "I have an extremely small penis and I will never be able to pleasure you. So I'm going to find other men for you to sleep with while I watch."
You're like, this is a really niche lifestyle.
10 minutes into our first date. And I was like, I've never left a date because I typically am like, you know what? Like, let's be a fun story regardless.
And
so I actually left. I was like, I really appreciate you being honest with me. However, I didn't need that much honesty. I'm just gonna go. So that was the one that was really bad. But this is the worst one. And I don't even remember like what these guys' names were. But this guy, he was a lacrosse player and played for the Roughnecks. So if anybody like knows this story, I was this girl, okay? So
wow.
And like, so Michaela, who I think is watching right now, was with me, and I was like, "Hey, this guy wants like is having a big like a big football party at his house. He, we haven't actually met in person yet, so like I'm not gonna go alone. Will you come with me?" Supposedly there's like 10 people there. So we get to this fucking house and we sit down and there's like 4 other girls there. I'm like, "Hey guys, how are you?" And I'm like, "Hey girls, how are you?" And we like sit down and they look at me, they're like, "So like who are you with?" And I was like, "Oh, like actually I haven't met this guy yet, but him." And every one of the girls looked at me and was like, "I'm with him." And another girl's like, "I'm with him." He fucking steps out of the room and is basically like, "Hey girls, I just like wanted to bring you all here and decide which one of you I liked the best." In the same room. This is not in like a online or anything. This is literally he invites us to a hockey or like a football party with like 5 of his buddies and 5 girls, and he's like, "Thank you all for being here today.
I will now hand out the roses."
and Michaela looks at me, she goes, "This is so fucked." And I was like, "This is kind of funny." So like me and like I think it was another girl, we started talking, we were kind of vibing, and then these 2 girls were like, "Oh, I have a lacrosse game later." So I think Michaela and I went to like we ended up becoming like kind of friends with these girls.
You're like groupies?
They were all like pretty, and they were like not his lacrosse game. These girls played lacrosse. So we went to like the girls lacrosse game because we became friends with the girls. And
you're like the real Bachelor people that are like, and then we all went to Coachella.
Yeah, and all the girls were hanging out, and they were sweet. But like I literally had this guy who was like, he and I was like, "Hey, you seem like a great guy. Like, what was your end goal here? Like, what did you want to get out of this?" And he was like, "Honestly, I thought it was kind of funny." And I'm like, "Hey, you're not wrong. So that's a great story." So those are 2 of my worst dates. Okay, now let's get back into your dates, your 30 dates in 30 days. What was your best dates? And I think Tom is on here right now. So Tom's number 1. We love Tom.
Yeah, so there was a lot of very like medium dates. Like a lot of people that like I liked, I saw again. And
if you weren't doing this, would you have probably like started like a relationship with them?
Definitely. Like there's a couple that stand out that yes, I would have like not seen anybody else and like been like exclusive with them. Like
they were like fairly mediocre when you look at it.
Like not mediocre, but just like not necessarily like the best fit for me.
Totally.
So one of the best dates, candidate 2, and he stuck around for a while too. Yeah, he was like one of my second dates, and I think he was actually like my second date, and I was like, this is like great, this is gonna work, like I'm having so much fun, I'm meeting so many new people. We like went to a Flames game. He was nice, super funny, but like kind of just a weirder guy.
Okay.
But that was a really great date. Oh my gosh, I went out with a guy who went to OLP and was like a little bit older than me. He was super funny. I really liked him. And then I went to like the science center with candidate 14. And this guy was like older. Like I think he was like 38 or something. So like quite a bit older than I was, and like a free spirit. So he was like, yeah, like I was a geologist and then I got laid off. Sick. And now I just like live in a van and drive around. And I was so vibing with that. I was like, oh my gosh, I'll quit my job. Like I'll go in the van with you. Which looking back, Wendy's my mom. She was like, no, you will not. Why don't you just hop back into those days? And then, but yeah, again, nothing that I was like, wow, like this is like no like instant connections necessarily. And then I went out with Tom, and which was honestly like the best, my date with Tom was like the best first date I have ever been on in my life. And it was kind of like funny. We ended up chatting on the app longer than I would have liked to. I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks because I got sick and like there was just so much going on. I like had to write an exam for work. So we chatted like for a long time. So I knew like we already had like kind of a connection like going into the date. And I was supposed to go out with him on Tuesday, and then I got sick, and then literally the only other day I had free following my like no first date on weekends rule was Friday. And I was like, oh fuck, like okay, I'm gonna have to go out with this guy Friday. Like it should be fine because like we've been chatting, but like oh my gosh, if it's a disaster, like how am I gonna get out of this? Like it's Friday night. I can't be like, oh, I have to go to work. I'm
a goldfish. I have to vacuum my floor.
Yeah, I work at 2 a.m. Gotta go. Yeah, so I was just like, oh, yikes. But it ended up working out so well. So I like find Tom. First of all, we like go to the Blues Can and we meet up at like 7 for a show that's starting at 9. And Tom's like, okay, meet me at the Blues Can because I have to buy tickets for later. And I'm like, oh, already this level of organization is like so attractive to me.
You're
like,
wow.
I'm like, wow, you're so organized. You have tables.
Yeah, any guys on here, literally, if you are just a little bit organized, like all woman wants is to be told what she's doing, like in terms of like an activity. Like women
and like
always are having to make up all of the things that we're doing. If you literally just say, hey, meet me here at this time, I promise it won't feel overbearing. So women want that. So like, don't be like, I don't know, what do you want? Like, tell us.
No, yeah, exactly.
So any guys.
So I'm like, oh my god, like we have our table at 9. And then he's like, yeah, so we'll just go over to like Old Beautiful and get a drink, which is like right in Englewood. Yeah. So we walk over there. It's like it's good. Like we're having good conversation. We sit down and like we've probably been talking for I don't know. Tom's probably gonna be like, it didn't go like this at all. But this is how I say it went. We're talking for like half an hour. It's just like witty banter, and then like somehow. Like the concept of a hollow man comes up, and I'm like, what the hell is that? And he's like, you've never been hollow manned? I'm like, no, like, and he, I kid you not, doesn't say anything else, lifts up my shirt, puts his stupid head under it, and Tom has like a giant head, so it's like now we're kind of making a scene in Old Beautiful, and chugs his whole beer through like my silk dry clean only shirt. And I'm like, my husband.
And that's the thing is like, it's like you and I would like die for that. Whereas like some other women would be like mortified, and that's okay.
I know.
I'm like figuring out like what you want, right?
Yeah,
and
like
that's so
what
funny.
A power move. Like that literally could have been like, and you're gonna want to find somebody else to go to the Blues Can with because like I am out of here. But like I thought it was like the funniest thing that ever happened to me. I'm like, wow, this man just drank through my shirt, and I've only known him for half an hour. So and that. Yeah, for me, I was like, that's the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. At that point, it was like such a good icebreaker, but again, not recommended for everyone.
Certainly not. But I think that also goes to say, Paulina, like, it showcases that everybody likes different things. So like, if a guy like this, like, doesn't like you, it has nothing to do with you, like, genuinely, like,
totally.
Like, it's just that you aren't compatible. So I'm really like, what I really hate seeing is like women who like get ghosted, which I hate ghosting, just like message and saying like, hey, I'm not into this. But I hate women who get ghosted and sorry, they're sitting there for a while.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm undesirable. And that's not the case. And I think this is a really good representation of that, where it's like you and Tom vibed immediately because he put his head under your shirt and drank his entire beer through your shirt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like there was a big possibility that you would have just fucking turned around and been like, we're not doing this ever again. So it just showcases like 1 in 10 women is going to be into it, and you were that 1 in 10, right?
That is
so
literally,
it's like,
yeah.
Yeah, and I think like dating a lot of people and figuring out what you want, that's what it's about, is figuring out what you want, and also like what kind of people like you. Because like neither of us are for everybody. And we know that.
And it's so true. And it's so funny because I always tell Tom, I'm like, oh, like I knew like the second I met Tom, like we would date for like a while. And I was like, I'm like, you're gonna be my husband. He's like, you're crazy, like go away. And then I'm like, did you think I was gonna be your wife? He was like, no. And then he was like, I've only met my wife one time. And I'm like, what the hell is this story? He's like, well, I'm at a bar. We're at the Den, like I'm in university, and I'm holding my beer in a bottle, and this girl comes up, slams the top of my beer. It goes everywhere. And then she says, I guess I owe you a drink. I'm like, oh my God.
You're like, that's my wife too.
Literally only Tom would find that funny.
Totally.
Like, other guys would be like, what the fuck is this bitch doing?
100%.
So,
honestly, that's the thing. Like I did lots of guys that like who really liked me, or guys who like literally were like totally turned off by me.
I know, they're
but
like,
that's the point. And then when I met Steve, same thing. It's like we vibed so well, and our humor was the same, and like we liked the same things to an extent. But that, like, just because like one guy doesn't like you, like literally doesn't mean anything.
And that's another reason to honestly like diversify your portfolio, because it's true. It's like when you get ghosted or like when stuff happens, I can guarantee you, I would say like 1% of the time it's actually because like they just don't like you. But most of the time it's not, it has nothing to do with that. It's like they're in scenarios like with work or their family life or whatever that they just like can't commit to dating, and like they don't have the balls to just tell you that. But it's so easy to like get down on yourself if you're dating like one person at a time and like getting rejected like 20 times. What, like it's easier to get rejected 20 times if you're like actively going out with people that you like
in like a span of like 2 weeks. You're like, all right, one done. Totally.
Exactly. And yeah, that's so true. I think like just knowing how those apps work and like knowing how people use them is like a good strategy. Like just
I love it.
don't put all your
what are your tips? Like what are your online dating tips?
Well,
you just
this is like my work from earlier, and I'm like, do the trades. Yeah, so I would say, like I said, like get a lot of different matches going. And again, like this process, I'm calling it a process, like I'm on The Bachelor, but like this
and also you did fully pull it clear, and you at candidate number 19 you were like, I'm done, goodbye, we're getting married. It was great.
Yeah, I didn't finish the full 30 days because my date with Tom went so well. I was like, okay, like I can't even, I think I tried. I was like, maybe I'll like try to like finish out my dates for the rest of the week, but I was like, I can't even like sit through when I'm just like, so have you met Dale? Like, what do you think about Dale? They're like, I don't know.
You're like, oh, what did he say about me? Like, yeah, totally. And I think that's the point, is like when you meet somebody who you actually really like vibe with, you will feel that way.
Exactly.
Right? And you don't want to see other people. So like that's also a really good reason why you date a bunch. Because like if you want to see other people, you're not that interested.
It's not a good sign. Yeah. And I mean, and that doesn't mean like the reason that I continue to see some of the people that I had like already been out with a couple times is because like people get nervous. Like first dates are always awkward. And like sometimes you don't really get to know someone. Like this like method of speed dating isn't for everyone. And I was trying to like give the people who take longer to open up like a fair opportunity, because like I don't necessarily need somebody who's like just like me and is like, hello, like I'm here, I'm the center of attention, like this isn't awkward at all, let's fucking do this. Like I like I wanted to like give them the benefit of the doubt and be like, okay, now it's like date 4, like this should be what you're like actually like, hopefully.
Totally. Because I've met guys that are like the first date were not like, didn't have like, I felt wasn't a good match, and then like 4 days in I was like, okay, this is who you actually are. Totally.
They like get funny. And you're like, great. And like those are people that are like getting written off a lot of the time because people aren't like, if like lots of people, they have like one like awkward moment in a date or whatever, and it's like, oh my god, like shoot me. And it's like, like awkward moments are just naturally going to be on like any first date. And when you go on more, it gets less awkward because you're just like drunk when you show up. Just kidding.
It's kind of like practice, like for real. People like, I like before I met Steve, I went on lots of dates, and people were like, how like, why do you like them? And I'm like, it feels like a performance. Like it feels like it's just like the more I do it, the better I get at it. And I got like so.
And it's true though.
I was like, I'm
like
so cool.
But that's a really good point, because it's like you learn how to, like I was saying, like how to talk about yourself, like how to talk about your job, your interests, your friends. And like, because you're so sick of the same questions, like, what do you do for work? Like, oh, I work in finance, so it's super boring. You like learn to like jazz it up. You're like, I work in finance, it's so fun, like this is what I do. And like you add unique elements literally just to keep yourself from like going insane and like having the same conversations again and again and again. Yeah. But it's true, like as long as you're like, I totally agree that it is practice, and it is something that takes practice.
Yeah. And honestly, I attest a lot of my success in sales to me dating. Like to me, going on a sales call is like going on a date. It obviously not romantically, but it's the exact same thing. It's building that relationship. So like the fact that I went on, like before I met Steve, of course, again, like 10 dates a week at times, like literally every night, like breakfast, dinner. I was like, let's go, let's just like see what I like. I actually was able to talk to all different kinds of people and make it very relaxed because of dating. And it's translated into my professional career as well.
Totally. So. And I mean, like you and I are one of like some of the most extroverted people I know. So like this formula works for us. Like it's so easy. Like I don't get tired. I don't need like to be alone. Like I don't like recharge from like being by myself. And I know that's rare. Like that is not everybody. Like lots of people are like, fuck, I downloaded this app and like that used up all the mental energy I have for today. And that's okay. Like that's okay too. But it's important to like know your boundaries and like set them. Like if you're tired of like talking to somebody on an app, like set a time that you're going to like put it away, or like set days that you're not going to go on dates. Like I never went on dates on Sunday because it's the Lord's Day. Just kidding. It's because I had dinner with my family, but still.
But like, totally. It is like, I think that's the thing is like people think dating is about finding other people, but like I think from your experience, my experience, dating is about finding yourself.
Totally.
Right.
And like
finding
getting to know yourself.
You have for yourself, and like what you will take, and setting your boundaries with people and setting what you are looking for. So it's not about if you kind of, this is one formula, like you said, to like date a bunch of people, but all you have to do is just like understand that dating is about you, not about the other person. Right. So like,
and knowing,
and
knowing what you want and like what you like. Like at one point I literally wrote a list out and I was like, hey, the person that I date in the long run is going to have like these 5 qualities. And it was like generic things, but like be funny, like make me laugh, have a job, like basic things. But like in the past, like weren't met, like spend time with my family, like just stuff like that. And I think it's really easy. Like I know lots of my friends right now would probably like make a list and look at their partners and be like, okay, like this isn't
totally. But
it's true.
It's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like so knowing what you want and not just like being like, yeah, I know what I want, like I'll know it when I see it. Like literally write it down and be like, and then make sure that you see those qualities reflected in your partner. And again, like not all the time. Like obviously everybody has bitchy moments like me.
Yes, and me. I have another friend who she was kind of tired of dating different people as well, and really wanted to meet like the person. So she wrote everything down and she put it in her windowsill. And the next week she met her like now husband. Like they got married this year. And
so the guy was just like walking by?
Basically. And it was because she actually had like written down absolutely everything she wanted and like wasn't gonna meet anybody else. But because she was like aware of what she wanted, it like came to her really quickly.
Right. So, you'll know it when you see it. It's a really great way to like save yourself a lot of time and hassle just by like knowing what you want. Like save yourself like the time, energy, everything by like eliminating people right away that don't have those qualities.
I love it. Okay, so what were the outcomes for this other than getting a awesome boyfriend who seriously is super hot and super cool?
Yeah,
What were the other outcomes for
wow.
you? Tom,
Tom, no home.
hi, I'm here.
Very valid points. Yeah, wow. Um, okay, the outcomes. Yeah, honestly, the biggest outcome was obviously like meeting Tom, but also it was going through that experience has made me a better partner. Like that dating 30 people or like 19 people in 19 days or whatever is a ton of work, like emotionally, physically, everything. And it's like newsflash, like being in a relationship is also a ton of work. So it did really prepare me. Like just because I met Tom, I wasn't like, and that's, I'm done. Like it's like you know how it is. Like every day you have to like work at your relationship. And seriously, like doing this process, I feel like gave me the mental stamina to like deal with like a ton of things at once and like really put in the work for my relationship and like what it takes to make it successful.
I really like that, Paulina. Like I 100% agree. Like once you, because like when you date a lot of people, and not even just a lot of people, when you, or like, you know, I know people who've met their partners in high school and then they're now together and they've been together forever,
Right.
and that is awesome. But once
Yeah.
you like are really able to connect with somebody or different people and discover what different people like and what you
Yeah.
like, you are able to translate that into your relationship. So like in my relationship, because I know exactly what I want and I know exactly what I deserve in a relationship and I know exactly what I will not take, it was very easy for Steve and I to build like a really cool relationship because I was able to say, absolutely not. If that happens again, I'm out, and I meant it. Right?
Exactly.
Or this is exactly what I want. So at the end of the day, it comes down to boundaries and dating and like figuring out what you want in a relationship is literally creating boundaries. So you're then able to take it, exactly like you said, take the like things that you learn from dating into your long-term relationship, and make like be kind. I always find that like people to think that if your partner doesn't understand exactly what you're thinking, then they don't know you. But in reality, like that's impossible. So like when you learn how to like ask for what you want, it is impossible, I promise. But when you learn how to ask for what you want with different people, and then you learn exactly like what you want, the relationship is so much easier. I totally agree. Yeah, relationships like, are hard no matter what it looks like, right?
Yes, and like even communicating, like obviously there was like a lot of people that like I dated and it went well, and like I didn't ghost them. I would text them and be like, hey, like I had a great time, because I did have a great time, but like I have met somebody who like I'm going to pursue further. Like that's just like it does teach you to have like difficult conversations, or like not necessarily difficult, but like it could be awkward. Like that's the reason people ghost people, because like they don't want to have that like kind of awkward and difficult conversation. But like having those is a really great way to learn how to have them also in your relationship.
Totally. So in my course, I'm going to do one shameless plug. In my course, I'm now taking people for February. January's all full up, but in February, which is super exciting. So if you want to sign up in February, we do have a couple modules that talk about finding your boundaries in relationships, and then also finding what you want in the bedroom. So we have talks about that, which is something that also when it comes to dating, like you don't really know what you want until like, you know, until you figure out yourself. So I think in terms of self-love, it's so important to figure out what you want before you are even able to give other people what they want, right?
Totally.
So do you have anything else that you want to add, Paulina? Or does anybody else have any questions for us on dating or on creating boundaries through dating?
Ooh, one thing I will say is, so I have, Maddie, like my sister was like, oh, it's like hard dating in a pandemic. And I'm like, no. This is the ideal time to date. Picture this. You download your apps. You're like, you've got like 5 candidates lined up. You could do like an early, middle, and a late seating on FaceTime. Like it's like you can FaceTime me at 5. I have my wine. Like you know what they look like. You can tell if you're vibing. Like you don't even have to leave your house. And then finally you FaceTime like 3 times. You're like confident you want to meet that person and like expose yourself in COVID. Not now with the new restrictions, but like, you know what I mean?
But like after, yeah.
Right, after. And then it's like you already have like a connection. Like you don't need to meet in person to know if you like someone. Like this is like a great way. Like if it's not going well, you can be like, oh, my connection died and I never want to talk to you again. Report, block, delete.
Totally.
But it's true. Like I'm like, this would really have changed the model if like if I was doing this at this time. And it allows you to see so many more people because you don't need to leave your house. Like, you can end a date at 5 and start a new date at 5:01.
Yeah,
you're already ready.
I like it. And I think another thing that I've been finding from different people that I've been chatting with is like, so many people are just so afraid of being alone.
Yeah.
But like, that's not a reason to be in a relationship with somebody. So that's your PSA for the day.
That's a reason to date.
The only reason why you're with somebody is because you don't want to be alone. Let's move on and let's do your own Bachelorette.
Let's get some candidates.
I'll help you set it up on Zoom and everything. Okay, so I got a question. Were you ever able to give a hollow man back to Tom?
Oh yeah, now we do it. Honestly, it's become too much. Like, all of it's so funny. We'll like come home from a night out and Tom's shirts are like soaked. I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, now we don't drink beers unless they're from shirts.
Of course. Yeah, that's good for you. Cotton in there.
Yeah. Oh, but it is tough. Like, one time we were trying to do it through like a sweater, like a thick cashmere, and it like really just goes everywhere. So I will say, watch for a porous material, where you're gonna get the best flow.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so I have one more question for you. In your mind, what is the most important thing in a relationship?
Oh, I don't know. Because I mean, like, there's different, like, communication, trust, but like, and obviously, like, those things are important. But for me, I think it's, oh fuck, I don't know. I want to say humor, but then there's so many times that Tom is like being too funny, and I'm like, can you just be serious for a second? Yeah. But it's true. So I would say though, humor though is what really like brings us back together. Like, if we have a big fight, then it's like, you give us a couple hours and like humor, we're like laughing, and it's like, it doesn't mean that problem is like resolved, but it kind of like puts us in a better headspace to then talk about that problem, because now we're like in a good mood and we like think clearly instead of like this. So I would say humor, but that's obviously
okay. Now, what is your number one self-love tip? So I'm putting you on the spot here. I didn't ask this before, so I want to have people on here. I just want to get what your perception is of self-love and what you do, because again, I admire you for your self-love, because you've always been so unapologetically yourself. What is like a number one tip that people can kind of follow in that footsteps?
I think for me, it has kind of always been easy for me to be myself. And I don't mean that in like, but like I've known you like my whole life. Like, we have always been like really like crazy and outgoing, but obviously there's things like, remember when I didn't have boobs, and that was like obviously the worst time of my life.
I remember when somebody wrote the boobless on a calculator.
Yeah, and
it broke your heart. I remember.
Yeah, Lewis, if you're watching, that's you. No.
I remember how much that hurt. Totally.
Yeah, and it's like, so I think like there's obviously things that like always shake everybody's confidence, but I think the number one thing is to honestly love yourself, which I know is so overrated, but like, your body and you are literally all you've got. Like, you're not changing, like, that's who you are. So if you don't like something about yourself, change it to some extent if you can, but like, there's certain things that you just can't change, so you can either work on them. Like, if it's like, I don't like how I'm a huge bitch, it's like, I'm gonna work on that.
And the self-awareness to be like, ooh, that was not nice.
Right, and to like actively like work on that, and like not be afraid of like feedback that people that love you give you. Like, if somebody is like, hey Paulina, like, I notice when you're hungry, I hate you. It's like, okay, well, why don't I just work on that? But it's true. It's like, I think take feedback from those like who you love and like whose opinion you value, and like use that to work on yourself and love yourself, because you are you. You can't change who you are.
I love it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Paulina, for sharing your Bachelorette story. It's seriously one of my favorite dating stories ever. I think it's so fun that you did it, and it obviously turned out really well for you. First of all, because you found Tom, and second of all, because you just like found yourself. I'll be super cliche. In the process, Paulina found herself.
This is what I have.
There he is. Hey, Tom. How are you?
Very good. Great.
Good.
You're cut off.
Anyway, so if you guys have any questions about dating and about Paulina's method, I'm sure she'd be open to you messaging her on Instagram. Yes. It is at Paulina Brittner. That's all it is, right?
It's really simple.
Yeah, and then if you have any questions about my course or kind of what to expect, send me a message. But thank you everybody for joining, and I will put this on my Instagram live soon, and see me next week. We're going to have someone here talking about how to find love after an intense breakup.
Yay!
So that's going to be fun.
Thanks,
so
Alyssa.
Thanks, Paulina.
Congrats.
I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks again.